my sins. You took my shame. Your life was just a perfect picture in this crooked frame. To find out that you were living, to be given, to be killed, to be risen, so that we can be forgiven for the emission of our sin. And people taunting, didn't listen. They'll be driven by will and submission, but you didn't give in to finish the mission. Not my will, thine will be done.
All right. First and foremost, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to the Most High God, whose name is Yahweh, and I do so by Hashem Yahweh Shai. All right, it's your brother Kayala, aka Boss Up, coming to you with a brief, Lord willing, word of wisdom, right, and dealing with temptation, right. A lot of our people come into the truth expecting for things to be light, expecting for things to be sweet, expecting for it to be all rainbows and sunshine, because you choose to or decide to serve the Lord, right? When in reality, that is the beginning of things, right? The Bible tells us that we have to be converted, we have to be born again and then come as little children, right? So when it comes to the life that you know as an adult, and then the challenges that you face now, and then when you're born again and you become as a little child in the new walk in a new way of life, right, it presents its own set of challenges, right? It presents its own course of difficulties that you'll then have to navigate through, right? So today we're just going to deal with a little bit of that, and we're going to start in the book. We're going to start in the book of Sirach. Going to start in the book of Sirach, right? And we're going to go to chapter 2, verse number 1. It says, "My child, when you come to serve the Lord, prepare yourself for trials," right? "Be sincere of heart and steadfast, and do not be impetuous in the time of adversity. Cling to him, do not leave him, that you may prosper in your last days." So the Bible tells us that when we are coming to serve the Most High God, man, we have to prepare ourselves or be ready for the trials, right? It also tells us to be ready for the temptations, right? These are the things that we have to know are coming. We can't be ignorant thinking that because we are doing the work of the Lord or looking to do the work of the Lord, that things are now going to be, we're going to coast through life, right? Um, the enemy that we face is not going to allow things to go that smoothly, right? Let's go here because um, let's go here. We'll go to the book of we'll go to the book of Ecclesiastes. Let's go to the book of Ecclesiastes. Lord willing, y'all got good sound. Good sound. We good on the audio? Let me know. Let me know. All right. We're gonna go to Ecclesiastes chapter 9. All right, then we're going to go down to verse number 11. It says, "I returned and saw under the sun that the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, neither yet bread to the wise, nor yet riches to men of understanding, nor yet favor to men of skill, but time and chance happeneth to them all." Right? So it does, listen, it doesn't matter how fast you try to get through life, doesn't matter how strong you are, doesn't matter how quick you pick up on things and you learn and adapt, and it doesn't matter if you're rich, it doesn't matter if you're poor. Listen, time and chance happen to us all, right? Verse number 12, it says, for man also knoweth not his time, as the fishes that are taken in an evil net, and as the birds that are caught in the snare, so are the sons of men snared in an evil time, when it falleth suddenly upon them, right? So those evil times, those temptations, those trials that are going to happen to you in this life, again, they fall on us very suddenly, the same way that the birds get caught in the snare, or the same way that fish get caught in the net, right? They just living their life swimming upstream, and then all of a sudden, bam, they're in the net getting caught out of nowhere, and pulled up into a different environment, into a different situation, into a evil time, as the Bible lays out here. Right. So, we can't, this is why we have to prepare ourselves to be tempted or prepare ourselves for the trials, because you never know when it's going to come about. You never know how it's going to come about. You never really even know why it's going to come about. Although ultimately it's because this is the way that life goes. And if you're choosing to serve the Most High, boom, this is what comes with that. But the evil net, the evil snare, these things happen to you out of nowhere. That's why you got to be prepared and make your mind ready when you come to serve the Lord. All right, let's go to the book of Matthew, chapter 26. And we're going to go down to verse number 41, right? Some wise words from our Lord and Savior, Yahweh Shai. It says, watch and pray that ye enter not into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak, right? So again, Christ, Yahweh Shai, is giving us the advice to make sure that we're watchful and to make sure that we're praying, right? Because the spirit is going to give us that inclination, right? The spirit is going to give us that wisdom, that intuition, that inspiration to let us know when temptation is coming, how to be prepared for it. But we also have to be watchful, right? Being able to decipher, or being able to understand the situations that we're putting ourselves in, understand the people that we're engaging in, understanding the times that we're in, right? Those temptations are going to come, but we'll be prepared for them as long as we watch and as long as we make sure that we're staying girded up in prayer, right? Because again, the spirit is willing, right? The spirit is willing to be subject to the Most High, to serve the Most High, right? But the flesh is weak. The flesh has its own lusts and its own nature that it desires to serve, right? And that's why the advice is to watch and pray. Let's go to the book of Hebrews, chapter 12, right? Wherefore, starting at verse 1, starting at the top. Wherefore, seeing we also are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and sin which doth so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us, right? So it's just going into making sure that you're doing your best to lay aside all of those sins, right? Laying aside all of those weights, those burdens, and being aware of those sins that so easily beset us or so easily trip us up. Why do they so easily trip us up? Oh, I'm glad you asked. Because the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak, right? So your flesh wants to give into that sinful nature. Your flesh wants to give in to those burdens. It wants to succumb to those things that are completely contrary to the spirit, right? This is why we got to watch and pray, and this is what we got to make sure that we're prepared. How do you prepare? You watch and pray. You gird yourself up in the spirit. You continue to stay glued to the scriptures to have an understanding, right? To have an understanding on how to deal with those things, how to deal with those times, those situations, and their variety of. Okay. So let's see now. Let's go to the book of Romans, right? In dealing with that, you know, the contrast between the spirit and the flesh, right? One being willing and the other being weak, right? Let's see. Our brother Paul expounded on that actually very, very well on what that looks like, right? So this is the book of Romans, chapter 7. And we're going to start at verse number 14, right? For we know that the law is spiritual, but I am carnal, sold under sin, right? So again, he's already showing you a brief depiction of what this is going to be about, right? This is going to be about the law, which is spiritual. The spirit is willing, right? But the flesh, which is carnal, being sold under sin, is weak, right? For that which I do, I allow not. For what I would, that do I not, but what I hate, that I do. Right. So he's going into how there's how these things are contrary to one another. And it's very difficult because he's the things that he doesn't like are the things that he does, and the things that he wants to do are the things that he doesn't do. Right. Verse number 16. If then I do that which I would not, I consent unto the law that is good. Right. Now then, it is no more I that do it, but sin that dwelleth in me. For I know that in me, that is, in my flesh, dwelleth no good thing. For to will is present with me, but how to perform that which is good, I find not. Right? For the good that I would, I do not, but the evil which I would not, that I do. Now, if I do that I would not, it is no more I that do it, but sin that dwelleth in me. Right. So he's going into the war, the contrast between the spirit and the flesh, right? And how easily beset he is, right? How when he wants to try to lay aside those weights and that sin that does so easily beset him, he's having a difficulty there. Why? Because the spirit is willing, but the flesh, you got it, is weak, right? So now um let's go to Galatians. Let's go to Galatians chapter 5. Galatians 5. Verse number 16. Right? This I say then, walk in the spirit, and ye shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh. Right? So again, he's further expounding on what he was just going over in Romans chapter 7. He's given a deeper understanding of it, right? For the flesh lusteth against the spirit, and the spirit against the flesh. And these are contrary, right? Opposite, in opposition, uh the one to the other, so that ye cannot do the things that ye would. Right? So the things that you would do, you can't do them. Why? Because the spirit and the flesh are contrary to one another. They're butting heads, right? But then he also starts to go into what that spirit is, right? And what that looks like to be of the spirit, to walk in the spirit, right? Verse number 18. But if ye be led of the spirit, here's where a lot of Christians get caught up. It says, ye are not under the law. Boom. So that means that the law is done away with. Kayala, conversation over. No. He expounds on it even further, right? And that this next verse, or these next verses, will debunk that whole ideology, right? Verse number 19. Now the works of the flesh are manifest, right? So he's going into the works of the flesh, which are not the works of the spirit, because they're contrary to one another, right? The works of the flesh are manifest, which are these: adultery, which is against the laws and the commandments of the Most High; fornication, which is the breaking of the laws and the commandments of the Most High; uncleanness, lasciviousness, idolatry. Okay, shall we keep going? Let's. All right. Witchcraft, hatred, variance, emulations, wrath, strife, seditions, heresies, envyings, murders. Like, listen, the list goes on, and he goes into all of these things that are contrary to the law, statutes, and commandments, right? They're all things that would be considered breaking the laws of God. And he says that those things are the lusts of the flesh. So the things that are breaking the law, statutes, and commandments are the lusts of the flesh, right? Then, contrary to that, keeping the law, statutes, and commandments would have to then be the works of the spirit. This is very simple, man. I've always been good at math, and 2 plus 2, we know it equals 4. All right. Let's go to the book of Proverbs, chapter 25. And we're gonna skim on down to verse number 28, right? Because this is what Paul is experiencing at this point. And this is why it's important for us to make sure that we're walking in the spirit and we are staying watchful and prayerful, right? To be able to be prepared for those times of temptation that come onto us, or come at us out of nowhere, right? Proverbs chapter 25 and verse 28. It says, "He that hath no rule over his own spirit is like a city that is broken down and without walls." Right? It means that you don't, if you can't contain and control your spirit, right? Walking according to the law, statutes, and the commandments, you are like a city that is broken down without walls, meaning that you are easily invaded. Those people or those nations or countries or other cities that want to come against you have no defense to try to get through. They have no opposition that comes at them, no army that can, because the city is broken down and the walls are not there in order to help defend, right? So getting into the scriptures, right? Staying prayed up, staying watchful. These are the type of things that are going to help you get your walls up, right? Fortify your spirit, your mind, right? These are the things that are going to help you become uh stable, right? Rather than being tossed to and fro, right? Doing the things that you do, not doing the things that you want to do, right? Doing the things that you don't want to do, doing the things that you hate, the things that you know you should be doing, you can't do them. Like, it'll keep you stable rather than being tossed to and fro, right? Um, so that is the way to get rule over your spirit, right? Now let us slide back to let us slide back here to the let's slide back here. We're gonna go to the book of Sirach, right? We're gonna stay in the book of Sirach, and we're gonna go to chapter number 18 this time, right? And we're gonna start at verse number 30. It says, "Do not let your passions be your guide, but keep your desires in check. If you allow yourself to satisfy your passions, they will make you the laughing stock of your enemies." Right? So you have to be able to keep your temptations, or keep yourself from following those temptations in check. It's a must, right? Because that's the way that you're gonna get caught in a snare. You're gonna walk right into a dang on booby trap. It's simple. You got to keep those passions in check, right? Your passions, those. As a matter of fact, let me see if I can, let me get this in the KJV real quick. So lock, yeah. Book of Sirach. Boom. The book of Sirach, chapter 18 and verse number 30. It says, "Go not after thy lusts, but refrain thyself from thine appetites." Right? So you, again, the things that your flesh is lusting after, right? These are the things that you need to make sure. Oh, buddy. These are the things that you need to make sure to refrain from. Keep yourself from chasing after or going after, right? And again, we already covered that the lusts of the flesh, or the things that the flesh lusts after, are manifest in these: the envyings, the murderers, right? The idolatry, the adultery, the fornication, things that are contrary to the law. So all of those things that are contrary to God's law, statutes, and commandments, those are the things that you have to refrain from. Even though your flesh might be lusting after those things, right? Because your flesh is of the world, and those are things of the world. You got to stay separate, right? You got to continue to be uh You got to continue to walk in a way that is not conforming to the patterns of the world, right? And we know that the world promotes all of these things, right? Look at all of the commercials look at all the commercials and the advertisements that they put in your face with flashing lights, nice little jingles to them to get you to buy into it, because these are the things that your flesh already crave and lust after, right? But you have to refrain from that appetite. Huh? Lord willing, y'all got that. Let's also let's also, since we're in the book of Sirach, let's chapter 27, boom, and verse number 10, right? Because again, as soon as you start to go after that lust, as soon as you start to fall into that temptation, boom, sin gonna catch you. It's gonna hit you. You're gonna be caught in that evil snare or that evil trap and not even realize it. Why? Because that sin was waiting on you. And we're gonna confirm it right here in the book of Sirach, chapter 27 and verse number 10. It says, a lion, right, a predatory animal, lies in wait for prey. So does sin for evil doers. So the same way that a lion is out there hunting and it uses its tactics to creep and low and get and crouch for the moment that it can pounce on you, the same way that sin does that same action or pattern right before it pounces on you. It's lurking, waiting for you to come into a realm or an area where it can sink its teeth into you. This is why you got to refrain from those lusts and those appetites. This is why you got to watch and you got to pray, right? This is why you got to continue to be prepared when you come to serve the Lord for those trials and those temptations. Okay? All right. Let's get the book of James real quick. The beloved brother. Let's get James chapter 4. Right? Because the moment that you refrain and keep yourself away from that temptation, right? The moment that you go in the opposite direction, guess what? That temptation will then leave, right? Because you left it, it's no longer in your presence. That's why James says this in verse number 7 of James chapter 4. He says, submit yourselves therefore to God, resist the devil, right, who brings those temptations, and he will flee from you with those temptations, right? This is what that practice looks like. This is what that practice looks like. You got to continue to fight, refrain from those temptations, those lusts, because the devil was lurking, waiting for you, and he's going to entrap you in that sin if you fall into it or if you give into it, right? But this is why you have to continue to resist him, and he's going to flee from you. How do you resist the devil? How do you resist the devil, right? The way that some people have painted him out to be, this great and powerful deity who's who's ever present, able to torture you and, bring about all type. Listen, our Lord and Savior, who we are followers of, has given us the perfect example of what it looks like to resist the devil, right? Let's go to, matter of fact, before I get there, let's go here, because in resisting the devil and him fleeing, you have to always be prepared, and you got to always be prepared to know that it may not just be that situation or that time where he's only going to come and attack one time, right? You may be able to resist him once, and then you have to be prepared for the return. right? Because this is a lifelong thing. The as long as we're alive and we're continuing to try to serve the Lord, to serve the Most High, we're going to continue to be faced with those trials and those temptations, right? So it's the book of Luke, chapter 11 and verse 24. It says, when the unclean spirit is gone out of a man, he walketh through the dry places seeking rest, and finding none, he said, I will return unto my house whence I came out. Right? So that spirit that you have now resisted, that temptation that you have now resisted that was waiting on you, right? He's going to go out and then he's going to circle back. He's going to spin the block, right? But how is he going? It's not just him spinning the block this time though, right? Verse number 25. And when he cometh, he findeth it swept and garnished, right? Because you've not given into that temptation. You cleansed yourself up and you've cleaned yourself up and started to walk after the spirit, right? So now you're in a whole different mode. You're in a whole different state, not with that dirt and that filth, because you're pressing towards the mark, right? Verse 26. Then goeth he and taketh to him 7 other spirits more wicked than himself, and they enter in and dwell there. And the last state of that man is worse than the first, right? This is why it's important for you to stay watching and stay prayed up, because the moment that you cleanse yourself or rid yourself of that temptation and that sin, you purge it. The Most High is able to purge it from you. You have to understand that those spirits, those devils, those demons are not going to just stop there, right? They're going to come back. They're going to come back stronger, and it's going to be worse off for you if they are able to overcome you or overtake you, right? We know a lot of people that have had sins in their lives that they struggled with overcoming, and then once they did for a period of time, they relapsed, and the state of that person was far worse than it was in the beginning, right? Because it's harder to overcome once you go back to it. That's what it's illustrating here in Luke, right? um that's what it's illustrating here in Luke. Now let's go to the book of Second Peter. Oh man, Second Peter. Okay, Second Peter chapter 2. Second Peter chapter 2. There we go. All right, and verse number 20, right? Peter expounded on exactly what Yahweh Shah was illustrating in Luke chapter 11. He says, for if after they have escaped the pollutions of the world through the knowledge of the Lord and Savior Yahweh Shah HaMashiach, right? They are again entangled therein, right? So if those spirits are able to come back in and overtake you, the latter end is worse with them than the beginning, right? For it had been better for them to not to have known the way of righteousness than after they have known it to turn from the holy commandment delivered unto them, right? So it's a lot better for us to not have known at all compared to knowing the truth, getting cleaned up from that sin, and then getting re-entangled in it again, right? Getting entangled in it again. It's going to be far worse for us going in that latter path, right? This is why it's important to make sure that we stay girded up, man. Prayed up, man. Watching, understanding the fruit, understanding the lusts of the flesh and what it looks like, right? Making sure that we're able to identify those those implications of where sin may be crouching down and waiting for you. Be aware. Come on, y'all. Come on, y'all. Matthew, let's go to Matthew chapter 17 real quick. We're gonna scroll on down. because at that point, listen, at that point, eh, sometimes there's almost nothing else that you can do other than fasting and praying. Right. Um, verse number 21. Right. He says, "Howbeit, this kind goeth not out, but by prayer and fasting." Right. There was some, a matter of fact, let me jump up to verse number 19. Then came the disciples to Yahushua apart and said, why could not we cast him out? Right? Because there was a spirit or some spirits that the disciples themselves weren't even able to cast out. Right? Because again, they were so strong, they came back more, and then the disciples and the person in whom they were casting them out of were in a state of disbelief. Right? And Yahushua said unto them, but because of your unbelief, for verily I say unto you, if you have faith as a grain of a mustard seed, ye shall say unto this mountain, remove hence to yonder place, and it shall remove, and nothing shall be impossible unto you. Howbeit, right? Howbeit, but this kind that we dealing with now goeth not out but by prayer and by fasting, right? So there are some spirits or some groups of spirits that once they overcome you, listen, they're not going to be able to be cast out. You're not going to be able to overcome them except through fasting and prayer, right? That's a must. That is a must. And that's why when we look at again our example Christ in Matthew chapter 4, right? It said, starting at the top, it says, then was Yahweh led up of the spirit into the wilderness to be tempted of the devil, right? So he's going to be tempted. That's his sole purpose right now, is to be tempted. But again, you got to prepare yourself. You got to watch, you got to pray, you got to make sure that you are able to understand those situations and scenarios where sin and temptation will be. You got to stay in your word, get girded up with the word. Why do you got to be girded up with the word? Because it's going to be your weaponry and your armor to use against those temptations, right? Let's go. Matthew chapter 4 and verse number 2. It says, and when he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights, he was afterward and hungered, right? So again, he's prepared, right? He's in a situation where it looks as if he's easily tempted, right? Because he's hungry. However, he's hungry because he fasted, which was the preparation, right? So he's going into the wilderness knowing that he's about to be tempted, and he's put himself in a position where he's ready for it, but he's also susceptible to it. This is why Christ is the big dog. This is why Christ is the big homie, man. This when he says that greater works we shall do, this is the type of greater works that I want to do. Right? I want to be able to be prepared like this for those times of temptation, so that way I'm not caught off guard, right? I'm not made into sin dinner. You know what I mean? This is what I want to be. Uh so verse number 3. And when the tempter came to him, he said, if thou be the son of God, command that these stones be made bread. Why? Because you hungry, right? Listen, if you're the son of God, you can do anything. Go ahead and turn these stones into bread, right? But he answered and said, what did Christ do? He answered and said, it is written. This is why you want to be girded up with the word of the Lord. During your times of fasting and prayer, you need to be going over these scriptures. Why? Because they are going to be the thing that helps prepare you for the temptation, for the trials. right? For those snares when they come out of nowhere. This is what's going to help you, right? So we gotta make sure that we are prepared like this by girding ourselves up with the word. Huh? So yeah. So where was but he answered and said, it is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. Right? Then, right, because the enemy wasn't done there, right? The temptation don't just stop there, right? Then the devil taketh him up into the holy city and setteth him on a pinnacle of the temple and saith unto him, if thou be the son of God, cast thyself down, for it is written. Here's where the devil tried to get sneaky, tried to get slick. Okay, cool. You don't want to give in to the temptation about the bread, even though you're hungry. All right, cool. How about I try to tempt you with some of this word, right? He says, for it is written, he shall give his angels charge concerning thee, and in their hands they shall bear thee up, lest at any time thou dash thy foot against a stone, right? Quoting the Psalm. Verse number 7, Yahushua said unto him, it is written again. So, right? He studies, he understands, he knows the word, he's girded up in the word, which is why when the enemy tried to sneak him, with the word, he already had a proper understanding of it, right? Verse number 7, Yahushua said unto him, it is written again, thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God. Again, the devil taketh him up into an exceeding high mountain and showeth him all the kingdoms of the world and the glory of them. And he saith unto him, all these things will I give thee if thou wilt fall down and worship me. Think Christ going for that? Absolutely not. Then saith Yahushua unto him, get thee hence, Satan, for it is written, thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shalt thou serve. Then what happened? James chapter 4 and verse 7 happened, right? Resist the devil and he will flee. Fight that temptation, refrain from those lusts of those flesh, and he will flee. Matthew chapter 4, verse 11. Then the devil leaveth him, and behold, angels came and ministered unto him. Right? This is how it's done. This is how we fight that temptation during these times. This is how we overcome those fleshly desires. Right? This is beautifully, well crafted, masterfully done, right? By the master himself. So, as our example, this is how we are to approach these things, right? Making sure that we stay properly prepared by being prayed up, by making sure we're watchful, right? By being observant, right? Being discerning and staying in your word. So that way, number one, you can keep the law, statutes, and commandments. Number two, you'll be able to embrace the wisdoms that come with the understandings of the scriptures. And then number three, when those temptations arise from the flesh, the spirit is able to calm them back down so that way you can properly be girded up and defensed and walled as a city, not one that is broken down and without walls, right? Let's go to First John chapter 2. Boom. And verse number 14. It says, I have written unto you, fathers, because ye have known him that is from the beginning, right? I have written unto you, young men, because ye are strong, and the word of God abideth in you, and ye have overcome the wicked one. How did Yahushua just do it? With the word of God abiding in him, he has overcome the wicked one, right? This is the same way that we are to do it, right? So, Again, just confirming and doubling down that this is how you overcome those temptations, man. This is how you overcome them. Making sure that you got that word girded up in you, and making sure that you are preparing properly, right? So that way when those wicked ones come, those wicked times come, those snares come, those traps come, those enemies come, you are going to overcome them. Now let's go back to the Apocrypha. Mm-mm-mm. Let's go back to the Apocrypha, back to the book of Sirach. And this time we're gonna go to chapter 1. And we're gonna go to verse number gonna start at verse number 21, right? Because again, the fear of the Lord drives away sins. Where it abides, it turns back all anger, right? So having that fear of the Most High God and what could befall you in regards to judgments for the things that you do to transgress the commandments, those are the type of things that are gonna also help you, um, gonna help you fight those urges, fight those temptations. They're going to be those things that kind of propel you into that resistance, right? The fear of the Lord. These are the things that you're going to be acknowledging during your prayers, right? These are the things that you're going to be, focusing on while you are fasting, right? Listen, I'm going to subject myself. I'm going to subject myself because I know that if I don't, I'm going to transgress the Most High and I'm going to suffer for it. I'm going to be punished for it, right? This is what you don't want. This is why the fear of the Lord is what drives away those sins, because you got to listen. I got to get this right. I got to get this right. I don't want to stay in this mess. I don't want to be a part of this mess. I don't want to have um that filthy feel when I give into those sins, right? I don't want to be put to death for something that the Lord told me not to do already, right? So that fear of the Lord is going to drive away those sins. All right, let's jump over one chapter real quick. And we're going to hit verse number 15. All right, what does the fear of the Lord look like? Those who fear the Lord do not disobey his words, and those who love him keep his ways, right? Those who fear the Lord seek to please him. Those who love him are filled with his law. Very simple and plain, right? This is what having the fear of the Lord looks like. You're going to look to please him. You're not going to disobey his word. You're going to be filled up with the law. Why? Because all of these things are what are going to be used to combat that flesh that lusts after everything that's tempting of the world, right? So like it, they ain't gonna fly. Get over here, bruh. Um, so this is why the fear of the Lord is essential. Because a lot of times trying to do these things on your own just because you want to do them, it's not enough motivation for you to number one, commit to it in some cases, but number two, stay dedicated to it, right? Be diligent in it, see it all the way through, right? If you're only doing it for a short amount of, if you're only doing it for your reasons, it's probably only going to last for a short amount of time, right? Until you feel like doing something different. Oh, well, just not really in the mood for pork. So, this month I won't eat pork. That's because you're doing it for you. And then after that month is over with, then you go back to eating pork. But again, you're breaking the laws, statutes, and commandments of the Most High, right? So now you're putting yourself at risk while you're giving into that temptation. But if you're doing it because of the fear of the Lord, listen, because I fear the Lord, I'm not going to do it, period. Right? There's no temporal timeline attached to it, right? Let's go to the book of First Corinthians. Let's go to the book of First Corinthians, and we'll go. Let's go First Corinthians. That's the wrong one. There we go. First Corinthians chapter 10. And verse number 13. Right? Yeah. It says, there have no temptation taking you, but such as is common to man, right? Listen, the things that you've been tempted with, the things that you're facing, right? We all got to go through it. We all experience it. It's nothing new, right? But God is faithful, who will not suffer you to be tempted above that ye are able, right? So listen, he's not going to put more temptation on you than what you're able to overcome. So when you are faced with that temptation, just know you do have the strength and the ability through the Most High to overcome it, right? It's possible. It's doable. So he will not suffer you to be tempted above that you are able, but will with the temptation also make a way to escape, that ye may be able to bear it. So listen, again, as you're watching and you're praying, right, you're gonna have that insight to be able to, nope, that's temptation right over there. I'm cool. I'm gonna go this way, right? Because the Most High will always provide a way of escape out for you, right? That way you can bear it, even if you don't feel strong enough to overcome it, even if you don't feel wise enough to overcome it. He always gonna have an exit plan for you, help you get up out that jam. The Most High is always gonna provide. Listen, this is the route we're gonna take to get on up out the spot, right? Because at the end of the day, remember, he is the person who gave you that temptation in the first place, right? We could look at our brother Job and see that. And we could also look, let's see, First Kings 22. And verse number 19, right? And he said, hear thou therefore the word of the Lord. I saw the Lord sitting on his throne, and all the hosts of heaven standing by him on his right hand and on his left hand, right? So he got the ministers, of doing the good things, and he got the ones that are going to bring about the bad things, right? What we would know or call or consider angels and demons, right? This is how it's laid out, right? Got the ones on the right hand, got the ones on the left hand side. And the Lord said, who shall persuade Ahab that he may go up and fall at Ramoth Gilead, right? So he's asking these heavenly hosts, who's going to go and provoke or tempt this individual, right, Ahab, to go up to Ramoth Gilead so that way he can fall. The Most High is setting these things up and orchestrating them, right? The same way that he set his son up to go into the wilderness to be tempted. The same way that he set Job up to go through the temptations and the trials that he had to go through, right? The Most High is the one who is orchestrating these things. So please believe that he knows what he's doing when he gives them to you, because it's not going to be more than you can bear. And he also has an exit plan for you to be able to escape it, right? So make sure that in your preparation, you're staying girded up in the word, Make sure you're understanding and keeping the law, statutes, and commandments. Make sure you're praying. Make sure you're watching, right? And make sure that you continue to have that reverential fear of the Most High God. And that's how you're going to overcome temptation every time. It never fails. It never fails. As a matter of fact, going back into 1 Corinthians chapter 10, and I'm going to end it on this note. Boom, 1 Corinthians 10. And boom, verse number 11. Now, all these things happened unto them for examples, right? All of these things happened to those individuals for examples, and they are written for our admonition, upon whom the ends of the world are come, right? So they're written, they happened to them, and then they were written down for us to have examples and to be admonished, right? To know that temptation is not above overcoming, right? Temptation is not stronger than you. As long as you stay trusting in the Most High God, by Hashem Yahawashi, you can overcome those things, man. And yeah, so just wanted to bring y'all some quick edification, motivation, and advice and wisdom that you can utilize not only today but through the rest of your life, man. As long as you walk in this walk and as long as you walk in this walk and live in this life, man, we're going to be faced with temptations. It happens to us all, right? But you can overcome it, right? Remember that. Don't ever forget it. Yabaraka Yahabashim Yahawashi, Ahabatham, Israel, and I'm going to say Shalom.
You took my sins, you took my shame. Your life was just a perfect picture in this crooked frame. To find out that you were living, to be given, to be killed, to be risen, so that we can be forgiven for the emission of our sin. And people taunting, didn't listen, they'll be driven by will and submission, but you didn't give in to finish the mission. Not my will, thine will be done.